A new South African cities network report assessing the financial fitness of 9 of the largest cities in South Africa has found cities are getting better at doing the basics right. It says the cities have demonstrated consistent financial management improvements over the past 15 years. Now, the cities under review include Joburg, the city of Tshwane, and eThekwini, among others. Well, with me, Geoffrey, Bickford, researcher at the South African Cities Network. Geoffrey, thanks indeed for coming in.
It's a pleasure, thanks.
Before we get into the content of this finance report, perhaps you can tell us exactly what does the South African Cities Network do and what does this latest report attempt to address?
Yes, so the South African Cities Network is essentially an urban think tank which conducts urban research across the 9 biggest South African cities. The State of Cities Finance Report is a biannual publication which essentially tracks the financial health of South African cities. And this latest edition, the 2015 edition, is building on a series which has been published since 2006.
And I see this latest one says, among other findings, that South African cities have largely done well. There have been 7 out of 9 unqualified reports, consistent financial management. But I was just thinking, I find it a bit hard to reconcile with what the Public Service Commission said last week about the Gauteng provincial government, saying that about 90 million rand was lost due to theft and corruption over the past 5 years. How do I reconcile the two?
Well, that's one way to look at financial management in cities, but at the South African Cities Network, we're a research house, so we tend to focus on some of the growing challenges around management and pressing issues which the administration can deal with. So at the South African Cities Network, and our research report indicates quite clearly that revenues have actually held up remarkably well since the 2008 financial crisis. And that's actually a very good indication that our cities are starting to get some of those basics right. I think in the same breath, it's important to remember that our local government structures are still very young and they still have a long way to go. So the improvements that we've seen local government and the big cities in particular make over the last 15 years, I think is very encouraging.
I see the one aspect was also a spend on infrastructure, which you said improved significantly. But then again, I just want to challenge it with something else that we've seen. In June, we've seen that the city of Joburg, for example, underspent. I mean, they spent 567 million from a 1 billion rand budget. So on that spending front, again, how do we reconcile what you find and what this finding tells us?
So I think large urban metropolitan municipalities in South Africa are under significant pressure. If you look at the urbanization rates that these cities are facing, they have growing demands to meet. And often those demands can't be met neatly by cost for service fee recovery that cities are providing. So infrastructure backlogs are a problem, and they are an area where cities need to spend, and cities have shown that they are spending more in infrastructure provision. But I think an important feature of understanding the dynamics of a municipal finance system is linking to what's happening at a national and local level. So, for instance, 50% of all municipal household bill increases are results of the direct cost increase that is established at a national level, that cities then either have to absorb and manage how they pass those costs on and absorb what they can relative to household bills.
All right, just for clarity, I was talking about Joburg water there, but look, some of the things highlighted in the report says that we've made some advances quite clearly. And this goes beyond Joburg city or the city of Tshwane. Other municipalities as well have shown some astuteness in the way they handle things on an administrative level. Take us through some of the things we can build on if we want to be a bit more progressive on the cities front.
Brilliant. So our key message in the report is that cities need to continue to improve on some of the basics that they've improved on. So there is room for growth because there are significant gains to be made by maximizing efficiencies, definitely. So some of the things you spoke about earlier, corruption, mismanagement, if we can start rooting out some of those areas, we can get significant financial gains. The second area is that we argue that those won't be enough. Cities need to continue to innovate and explore new ways of generating and managing revenue in order to meet their growing needs and drive the kind of inclusive growth agendas which our policy tells us we need to achieve.
I'm afraid that's all we have time for, but thanks very much indeed. Geoffrey Bickford from the SA Cities Network. Thanks indeed for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me.